Number two, there are three words that I will use. The discipline, the precision, and the responsibility of dealing with people's lives is the weight on the shoulder of every neurosurgeon. The same weight is found on the shoulders of a blockchain baron of Africa. The three letters or the three F's: family, finances, and flight. Family, finances, and flight. What do I mean? Thank you kindly. I will begin with flight. I will begin with flight. You know, when you step into the shoes of business, or when you are considering the entrepreneurship route, we need more entrepreneurs. Don't dear employee, soon to be an entrepreneur. You need to know that as you live the safe comfort of corporate life, or the safe comfort of being on a payroll, you are about those key relationships are the same here on earth. Just like how our DNA is not the same. So the intensity to which your gas sensors is picking up the gas or the chemistry between the two of you is not the same. The intensity with which husband and wife, man and woman are moving in the same direction in life is not the same. So to the level to which you're being in the cockpit dynamics, commandeering your lives forward, to the level to which the glue between you, or the chemistry, or the language on the home front and in the boardroom, to the language that is viable for you, then you can consider being in business together. However, I'm going to give a disclaimer. Even though I'm in business with my wife, she's my co-founder and she's my wife, I tend to switch between two heads very naturally, you know, because I have to figure out certain decisions during the day. Do they require me to be the director, or to be the blockchain baron of Africa, or do I need to switch the head of a husband? Clarity between those. When it comes to matters of the business, I need to make decisions that are in the best interest of the business. When it comes to matters of the home, I need to make decisions that are in the best interest of the home. Submitted a request on their behalf, even though they were my ex-colleagues. She asked that, listen, Javi, you need to not be a director for today. Be that husband who can hear the request of my heart. I was like, okay, I will look at this thing. So when we looked at it, long story short, we evolved them out of trading hair extensions out of a handbag. Within 36 months, we 10x them, more than 10x them, into a revenue position where they moved from $500 in their handbag to actually being a $2 million entity. Within 36 months, 4 bricks and mortar branches. We set up 2 of them inside 5-star hotels. They were now hiring 40 staff, and their square meter revenue was taller than even the largest retail JSE listed companies. They were bringing, I'm telling you, so that's where we found ourselves.
Beautiful. That's awesome. I like the hand holding. It's really awesome. And you see, one of the things that excites me is can someone being able to take a small business and move it to the level that you have done with even salons and other small businesses that you have challenged to, like you said, grow taller than their normal height. It's an amazing feat, and that is what the kind of thing we need today. So tell us, how did your professional history, you've told us about how your family impacted your business acumen. How did your professional history impact you and inspire you to grow Coronet Blockchain as a company?
Thank you kindly. You see, being raised in an entrepreneurial family, my muscle memory, or my DNA or genetics or my posture became business later in life. So across the management consulting practice that we ran, we ran it with those lenses. We ran it from that cubicle, or from that kind of a vantage point. Fast forward later, we get a knock on our door from one of my ex-colleagues from Deloitte, and within that environment, they're telling us that, listen, Shadrack, Pretty, we know you are running this growth agency, this 10xing business, but we have fallen on hard times, and we are now bedroom dwellers. We live in the backyard of nowhere. We are selling human hair extensions out of a handbag. Can you do something? So obviously, my first reflexes was, oh no. We have never worked in the informal sector in a while. I haven't touched the informal sector since the days of being an outsourced partner to my mom back in my house days. So I'm not going back there. I'm basically heading in a different direction. But of course, thank God for the
I'm telling you, you see, what you've told me, one of the things I've learned is, if you're a young man, you better listen to your wife. You better listen to your wife.
There we go.
But I want you to, you can speak a little of that if you want, but I also want you to talk to young people who are in employment, in paid employment, especially in these times when a lot of people are losing their jobs. Digital disruption is moving businesses out of the way. How can people do that transition? Can people do that transition before they are forced to do it? In your case of their colleagues, they were forced to transit, and they were lucky enough, blessed enough to find someone like you to move them to a higher level. What do you say to people who are currently in paid employment, and maybe they need to think about what they can do outside of paid employment? Please go ahead.
Of course, thank you kindly. So what I'm hearing is to take the plunge into business or not take the plunge.
Yeah.
So to take the plunge proactively or wait to be pushed off a cliff. That's a very interesting question.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think what I can say is one thing. Most people, they say Africa is rich in minerals, but Africa is poor in
your steps. And you gave a figure. You gave a figure of 18 months. And you know, it reminded me of a certain entrepreneur, the guy who started Express Pay in Ghana. And he said when they came to Ghana, they thought payment systems were going to be fully embraced immediately they came in. But in one case, they spent more than a year trying to get the telco to actually allow them to integrate. So they needed to have enough capital to sustain them before they started making profit. Yes. And that's an amazing thought there. That's an amazing thought. Now, your medical background, I wanted to tell us, you see, I think it's when I read your post about my navigating from being a medical person, a neurosurgeon in training, to going into blockchain. I mean, the transition to me was glorious. And I asked myself, how did this guy manage to do this? So I'd like you to just tell us a bit about that. How did you do that pivot between, your medical past and your blockchain future? Go ahead.
Of course. Thank you kindly for the great question. Our blockchain application or our blockchain vertical focus is in supply chains. So if you look at that as a departure point, you will see that there is such a strong alignment between supply chain configurations and new veins and the transporting system. So what do you call it? The human being is the most sophisticated supply chain miracle.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. that is incredible. That is like incredible.
in this time that we have spoken so far with your audiences, do we know how many circles, how many times your blood has actually circulated from your toes back into being pumped repumped in your heart? All the circulations and all the connecting of dots, connecting of neurons in me to be able to respond to your deep, insightful questions. Entrepreneurs to not be stuck with the paralysis of analysis. As much as I'm saying they must plan, they must not over-plan. As much as I'm saying they must be bold, they mustn't be overly bold. There is a fair measure of intuition, boldness, and planning, where wisdom shakes hands with the current reality. So we need a balance of those. So I'm gonna use flight. You must know, dear employee, soon to be an entrepreneur, you need to know that as you live the safe comfort of corporate life or the safe comfort of being on a payroll, you are about to take a flight.
Awesome. Defy gravity with planning. Defy gravity, thinking about your family, your passengers, so to speak. that is very, very insightful. Very, very insightful. And I like the analogy you made about lift and gravity. Everything about flight tells you that the forces are against you, and you have to generate an opposing force that is superior to all the forces that are trying to pull you down. And that is so insightful. Thank you so much for that. So let's move a little to the story of Coronet blockchain as a company. What has Coronet done for Africa, and what are the plans of Coronet blockchain for the next few years? Viewers, if in case you've not watched the interview with Pretty Kubyane, Shadrack's wife, you need to watch that to learn a lot more about Coronet. And I just want Shadrack to give us a little more insight into what Coronet blockchain is doing with technology for African, particularly for the informal sector. And what are your plans for the next few years? Please go ahead, sir.
It's supply chain things. We need to flash them out to enable and mechanize and weaponize supply chains towards that transformation. African elders, they've done a brilliant job in bringing the free trade agreement live in 5 years. And they hope to lift 30 million out of poverty, 30 million people out of poverty by 2030 to 2035. We need to ensure that that poverty upliftment or defying gravity to lift that many passengers from the ground requires the transparency, the truth, and the traceability of blockchain to ensure that we referee the trade dynamics. That's where we are on the path of that vision. Last but not least, there's a lowering of 90% of border tariffs. We see it differently. We don't just need to lower the tariffs by 90%. We need to convert our border posts.
Beautiful. And one of the things I picked up from what you're saying is you went with those who are experienced in the arts. People who have, I like the expression, the muscle memory. They could do this without thinking too hard. And that is what you went for, both in terms of the technology and in terms of those who are running the supply chain system in Africa. And that is absolutely beautiful. It's a learning point. It's a learning point. If one is entering into something huge, you better enter with people who know the way. And that is amazing. All right, I'd just like to acknowledge Florent and Evelyn. Thank you for joining. As we very shortly, I'll give you an opportunity to ask Shadrack 1 or 2 questions, if that will be fine. And I would like to, I'd like to, let's go ahead a bit. We have about 10 minutes to go. Emerging technologies. So many of them are up now. AI, cloud computing, IoT, and so on and so forth. What opportunities do you see for Africa in these other technologies beyond blockchain, or aside from the blockchain?
That is very much an interesting question. For the benefit of those in the room, I would like to encourage a certain bias, not towards the toolkit or the tool.
Very much appreciated. You see, and I think that alludes to. Thank you, Flora, for your question. I'm going to read it out shortly. And I think what you mentioned just now alludes to what you said earlier about solving the problem on the ground, not just thinking about the tools. And I had a discussion with a few data scientists yesterday in my office, and they were saying that there are a lot of fancy things on the Azure platform. There are a lot of fancy things on the dashboards, Databricks, machine, etc. But in business, not everyone quickly adopts them. They are looking for the simple things that will solve the problem they have. And it's amazing. Can this solve my problem? Is it fancy? Thank you so much for that. So we'll round up now, but I'll just take maybe 2 or 3 questions from the audience, and then we can let you keep being the baron of blockchain in Africa. So Flora has a question.
Thank you.
Said, if banks come to adopt blockchain, do you think companies like Swift will soon shut down?
On a serious note and on a parting note, principles, and principles. None of us can ever be so tall than to be taller than gravity. None of us can be so tall than to obey the aerodynamics principles that are a recipe towards takeoff or towards success. Each and every one of us, whether you are in blockchain, whether you are in data science, whether you are in cloud computing or any corner of the world, or whether you're solving for remittances, whatever it is, each industry landscape has got its gravity point. Don't go in there, whether those gravity points are regulations or maybe they are consumer adoptions or consumer distrust. Every landscape has got its gravity point. What we need to do is through obeying and leveraging principles in any sector in order to defy gravity. So do not place all the trust in how smart you are or how hard you work or how much you know about the industry. Nokia knew too much about the telecom sector. They were a giant, but they still failed to see that the turbulence was shifting, that the market share was being snatched from under their feet. So whether you're an individual or you're a legacy firm, principles, adapt or die. That's what you need to realize. So that's the first part. And my last point is, just like how success has got principles, failure has principles. I can give you a failure recipe. Make sure you surround yourself with losers and people that are lazy and people that are negative. I assure you, you can fail tomorrow. You don't need to try hard. Surround yourself with failures, surround yourself with losers and those that are negative and those that are lazy. That's a sure recipe for failure. So knowing that, you need to do the opposite. See where you are headed, find out what your success coordinates are, and prepare for takeoff and prepare to stay in the air. Principles.